So yeah, good morning everybody and happy Christmas if I haven't said it before. So today it's going to be a slightly different type of lesson. We're going to do some bits and pieces and there's no assignment for today, so hopefully you guys can spend the week and catch up on any assignments you still got to do. But yeah, so today what we're going to do is in the schedule it says the FreeFlow project, and we are going to go over the FreeFlow project, but I want to do another couple of things as well. So first of all, I'm going to go over the lesson schedule, just so that we get a bit of a roundup, and just before Christmas we can see what we've done and see what there still is to be done in the course. So we'll have a little roundup like that, and then we'll go into the FreeFlow project, which is the research project, which is based around the healing department. So I want to just present that a little bit to you, so you know roughly what is coming up in the research project. Because if this hub, the clinic hub and the health flow program, which is part of Network Healers, is going to be part of this research project, the FreeFlow project. So very important for you guys to start getting your head around what that actually entails. And that's going to start in July. That's going to start in July after this theory, when we start actually doing the practical side of taking on healing partners. Then the research project hopefully is going to start at the same time as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that this morning. And depending on how long all that takes, because it's feel free to butt in and ask questions and have discussions along the way as well. Depending on how long that takes afterwards, we thought that we would do a little talk and discussion about our soul group, our soul family, right from the very start of when our soul family first evolved. All those long years ago, all those incarnations ago, and maybe go through a little journey of spiritual evolution of how our particular soul family has evolved over the years, all the way through to the end goal of spiritual awakening, self-realization, Kundalini awakening, and maybe even talk about the future a little bit as well. So let's get going then. So first of all, well, actually, I should first start by asking you if you got any questions or comments or anything to talk about in terms of some of the assignments or any of the lessons so far. Have you got any questions about the course before I talk about the course contents? Right, I'm just going to share my screen, and I'm just sharing Classroom basically. So this is from Classroom, and the document I'm going to show you is in Classroom. And it's in the classwork section, as you can see here, and it's in course contents. And I showed you guys this at the start of the course, but let's just have a quick look just to see where we're at. I'm not sure if you can actually read that writing or not, but you can always go back to the document yourselves. So we've got these modules. We've got these 7 modules, just to remind you. 1, networked healers. 2, self-healing. 3, reincarnation and karma. 4 is energy healing. 5 is anatomy and physiology. 6 is the projects. And 7 is the awareness of the source. And each one of those modules has got a set of lessons, of course. And these lessons here are not in order, because some modules you get beginner lessons and advanced lessons all in the same module, so they're all spread out evenly across the course. So I'll go into the lessons now. So the lesson schedule is in the lesson schedule folder. Let's have a look at that quickly. So this is what we've done so far. Can you guys actually read that or not? Yeah, okay. So 1st of September we started, and we did an introduction to Network Healers. And then on the 8th of September, we did the A Guide to Healing. That was the diagram of the Guide to Healing with the universal law of healing on it. So it was quite a complicated diagram. So I'm sure at some point you'll probably want to go and have a look at that again, because some of the lessons later on refer back to it. There was a lot of information on it. I wouldn't expect everybody just to take all that in one go. But the A Guide to Healing was, if you remember, it was that diagram where the universal law of healing is the separation, the source creates energy in a separation, duality, and then balancing that duality is what healing is all about, and the road to self-realization. There were, on that diagram, there was all the cycles of suffering with the different the different incarnations, and then the journey back to the source, back to the unity, is the journey of healing. So that was the AA Guide to Healing. Then we started the lessons on self-healing. The self-healing, we did all them at once. So from the 15th of September to the 27th of October, we did the self-healing, which is the pyramid course, that we teach to the general public on Saturdays once a month. So the AA Healing Pyramid, one lesson, then the spiritual layer, the psychological layer, the emotional layer, the bioenergy layer, the material body layer, and the silent revolution. We did all those lessons. And that's when we did all the homeworks with writing questions and answers for each one of those layers. And then we went into reincarnation on the 3rd of November. So we did 2 lessons on reincarnation. We talked a bit about the basics, or the biology behind our theory of reincarnation, which will turn into a project eventually. And then lesson 2 was all about spiritual evolution, life plans, self-realization, Kundalini awakening, all that stuff. And then we talked about the collective mind and the energy biosphere. That was the lesson on the 17th of November. And we talked about how energy gets transferred between people through the collective mind, through chakra cords. And that was our telepathy. I think telepathy assignments was in that lesson. And then we did a lesson on karma, Karma 1. And there's a few lessons on karma, but that was the karma emotion engine, mostly about the karma emotion engine, how karma is emotional memory and how it actually gets produced by the organs in the lower mind and processed and produces emotions in us, and how when we're feeling an emotion, we are burning karma, we're burning old karma. And when we're thinking in the mind, thought patterns, we're producing more karma for the future. But just to remind you, you guys have finished creating karma, because as you go through Kundalini awakening and the Kundalini phase, once you pass the Kundalini phase, part of the transformation is that those organs in the lower mind disappear and you stop producing karma at all. And then on the 1st of December, we did energy healing, lesson on energy healing, the basics of energy healing, which is what energy healing really is at a fundamental level, the biology of energy healing, how energy healing is created in the mind through intention, through the power of intention. And we talked a bit about magnetic enzymes, which is what healing energy is, long strips of magnetic types of magnetic fields, and that gets programmed by the mind, and that's part of our normal natural healing mechanisms of the body. And energy healing is using that with conscious intent. It's hijacking that system and using it with conscious intent in our own bodies, but also transferring it to other people. So that was energy healing. Then on the 8th of December, we did intuition, the basics of intuition, understanding what intuition is, the guidance from a higher mind to a lower mind. Well, we talked about a few different types of intuition, but the main one we're talking about is the guidance between the higher mind and the lower mind, to keep the lower mind on the life plan. And then we talked about using intuition with conscious intent, because we do that in Network Healers. And it's a big part of how we work in Network Healers is using intuition. And now we're on the 15th of December, and it's the FreeFlow project today. So I'm going to just finish off talking about these lessons quickly, and then we'll talk about the FreeFlow project. So next lesson is on the 5th of January after today, and that is going to be about emotional and energetic self-protection, which is very important for healers, and very important for, to be honest, it's very important for any profession where you're helping other people and you're making connections with other people and you're helping other people who are in distress of some kind or vulnerable. So there's certain ways, and we were just talking about this, weren't we, Chrissy? There's certain ways that we can protect ourselves as healers. And that's talking about emotional self-protection, but it comes down to energetic self-protection because it's about chakra cords and transfer of energy between people and getting drained of energy and transferring emotional energy between people. So it's all about taking control of those emotional connections. Right, then on the 12th of January, we're going to start anatomy. So there's going to be quite a lot of lessons on anatomy. So we'll do an introduction, the structure of energy. That's basically introducing the concept of anatomy and what our bodies are made of, what our material body is made of. We'll do a little bit of quantum mechanics in terms of atomic structure, just the basics. And we'll talk about magnetic fields, what our soul is made of, and all our energy frameworks. And then we'll have 2 lessons on the material body. Then we'll have a lesson on the lower mind anatomy. And we've done a little bit of that already, haven't we? We will have 2 lessons on the energy body. So there's loads of stuff in the energy body. So there's 2 lessons. Loads of important stuff at this stage. I mean, all of these frameworks, to be honest with you, are super complex. I mean, think about the material body and how complex that is. You've got the same level of complexity in these energy frameworks. So, this is going to be a field of study for hundreds and hundreds of years to come, really. And anyway, so there's certain systems in the energy body that are really important to us right now. So we've got 2 lessons on there. We've got the chakra system, we've got the meridian system, we've got the FreeFlow system, we have the karmic grid or the karmic system, we've got the Kundalini system. All these are really important to know about at the moment. So we'll talk about all that in detail. And then a lesson on the high mind anatomy, also very important. And there's some specific things in the high mind which are really fascinating. We talked about them a little bit already. The conscious awareness filter, where our awareness is happening, where our true self is, the awareness in the mind, in the high mind, the channel for consciousness in the high mind. Okay, so that'll be anatomy over, and then we're up to the 2nd of March now. We're going to start talking more about network healers and working within network healers and how we work in a healing hub. So structuring the healing journey, that is how we apply the healing journey to help somebody who's come to us, who's joined as an applicant or a recipient of healing, or in the clinic we call them healing partners. So how to structure that healing journey. Then we've got a lesson on joining network healers. There's quite a few bits and bobs to go through in terms of paperwork and other joining procedures. 16th of March, energy healing part 2. So we'll talk about non-intention healing, which is a kind of more, you could say, a more advanced type of healing than intention healing. You got an intention healing, which is how to program healing energy with the lower mind, through the thought process of intention. Then you've got non-intention healing, which is energy healing, which is coming from your higher mind, which is not activated through the thought process. So that's a completely different way of activating healing energy. We'll talk about that. And this is mostly how network healers actually functions. Then on the 23rd of March, awareness, the 7th principle of network healers. Because at the start, we talked about the 7 principles of network healers. Well, that's the 7th one, the awareness. Consciousness, what is it? How is it formed? The different types of awareness. And then the universal trinity, a lesson on the universal trinity. And we touched on this, I think, last lesson. And we've mentioned it a few times before. The 13th of April, the universal trinity. That's how the universe works. That is, and that has been, the universal trinity in various forms has been fed to humans, to the lower mind from the higher mind, has been fed through intuition over thousands of years. So there's different bits of the universal trinity sort of sprinkled out in lots of different religions and spiritual traditions. Some people could even call it the golden thread that runs through all religions. So we'll talk about the universal trinity. And here the trinity we're talking about is source, non-physical source, acacia or akashic information, and energy or form, and the interplay between those 3 aspects. Okay, then we'll talk about the book of codes. And we'll talk about writing the book of codes, because it's down to us to actually start writing it properly. Now, we've got the concept of the book of codes. This is how we're going to work in Network Healers, and we're going to use codes for specific medical conditions, which is a code, which is just an abbreviated set of instructions for energy healing, basically. And then 2 lessons, Golden Energy Healing System, part 1 and part 2. And this is going to be our system, our AIA system of energy healing, and it's going to include all forms of energy healing. Really, it's going to be intention healing. It's going to be non-intention healing. There's going to be the book of codes within it as well. There's going to be hands healing, using how to heal using your hands. There's going to be distance healing in it. It's going to be a full system of energy healing that we can use and also teach to other people. And then we're going to create a course, actually, while I'm at it. We're going to create a short course on this as well, because we have this short course of self-healing with the 7-lesson course on self-healing that we give to the general public. Well, we're going to create a short course of energy healing to teach to the general public as well. And that's going to be based on the Golden Energy Healing System. Then we've got another lesson on intuition. Intuition part 2, that is going to be the journey of intuition. And we'll talk a lot more about how intuition changes over the course of spiritual evolution and through self-realization as well, which is what you guys are going through. Then on the 18th of May, Reincarnation part 3. So we'll talk about the project, the research project, and applications in healing, how we can apply what we know about reincarnation to healing. And Karma 2 on the 25th of May. So again, applications in healing. Now we're really trying to apply everything into the healing process, into helping others with their healing journey. Then we've got the Collective Mind and Energy Biosphere part 2, and this is where we will talk much more about the astral planes. In the first one, we talked about the collective mind, the structure of the collective mind, how it's made, how it sort of sustains itself, and transferring energy between people or sending communication across the collective mind. And then in part 2, we'll be really focusing into the astral planes. And so we'll learn about all the different things going on in the astral planes, all the different beings in the astral planes, all the different dream constructs in the astral planes, traveling about the astral planes, that type of thing. And 8th of June, Energy Healing Part 3. So that'll be the most advanced lesson on energy healing. And we'll talk about some different concepts of healing. One is called Maya healing or Maya organ healing, and another one is called Akashic healing. And I won't say too much about that, apart from it is another type of healing which goes beyond magnetic enzymes. It goes beyond higher mind healing. It is a completely different type of healing where there is no transfer of energy healing or healing energy between people. It happens completely remotely through the source. And this happens through a Maya organ, which grows through the phases of self-realization. So it's a different concept of healing. And then 15th of June, so a couple of lessons on case studies. So some of the case studies that we've had before, we'll put them into some lessons so that we can trace somebody's journey of healing all the way through from start to finish, because that's what we're going to be doing in practice in Network Healers. And then a couple of lessons on the FreeFlow project preparation, because in July we're hopefully going to actually start the FreeFlow project. And that is a research project, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. And then 13th of July, an exam. And, if some people don't like exams, some people do. It's absolutely fine. It's not going to be a terrifying exam, and it might well be an open book exam, as in, we give you an exam and you come back in a week or whatever and have it completed. We haven't actually written it yet, so we're not sure how that's going to be. But it's not going to be a horrible exam, don't worry. All right, there we are. That's the list of lessons. Any questions or points to discuss about that? Good. That's nice to hear. That's a good sign. Lovely. All right, so that's a bit of a roundup we're at Christmas now, so we're what are we, sort of a third of the way, almost half. All right then, so let's talk about the FreeFlow project then, because in July, hopefully, we're going to start the FreeFlow project. So first of all, let me show you a PDF that I have created earlier this year. Created it, and it's just a general guide, basically. And I'm going to upload this to Classroom for everybody if you want to go and have a look at the PDF, because I'm not going to read it through, word for word, because that would be far too onerous for you. But I'll show you the PDF. I'll talk you through it. I'll give you a rough explanation of what's going on, and then I'm going to update you of where we're at with the actual start of the project, because this PDF is just a guide that we wrote at the start, and it's just it's a bit, it might not happen exactly like this. It's just a guide. It's basically what we want to achieve. So let me share this. So the FreeFlow Healing Project. So I guess I should just quickly say, why is it called the FreeFlow Healing Project? Well, obviously we have been talking about the free flow system, haven't we, in the energy body. This is how healing energy actually gets around the body. And the chakras, the chakra cords, are connected to the free flow system. So when energy comes out of our body, it goes through the free flow system, through a chakra cord, and into somebody else's free flow system. So that's why we're calling it the free flow system, the free flow project. But another reason really is that we don't want to use any words that are already loaded in some way. So energy healing, for example, is a loaded word, and it will put some people off. Certainly in the scientific community, using words like energy healing is going to put people off. Now there is a word that's used in America for some of these therapies, and it's called biofield therapies. But not everyone likes that word either. So the thing about language, and our language through this project may well change quite often. I don't know if we'll be still using the same words at the end of it. I don't know. But we thought we'd use Free Flow Healing Project, because free flow is not really a phrase that's used much out there. So hopefully it's not going to trigger anyone out there, because we've got to navigate the landscape quite carefully, I think, because if we want to get what we need out of all this, then we've got to navigate through the mainstream. We've got to navigate through the scientific community, and as you're probably all aware, scientific community can be a little bit sticky. So there's an introduction here, which I'm not going to read to you, but I'll read to you the last little bit. Basically, I'm just in this bit of writing, I'm just explaining about the history and the cultural aspects of energy healing. The fact that healing has been in our culture for thousands of years, and there's something in it basically that we need to do some experiments on. So I'll just read the last paragraph. And so the Free Flow project is tasked with detecting the malleable magnetic energy frameworks that surround, sustain, and flow around the human system, along with investigating the mechanisms by which healing energy, in brackets, magnetic healing enzymes, can be produced within the body and transferred to others through flexible magnetic pathways. So already you can see I'm starting to use words and language that the scientific community may respond a little bit more to. It's nowhere near there yet, to be honest with you, because most of the scientific community won't even like some of this language. But anyway, it's a step along the way, and we'll pick up the right language along the way as we actually start the project. So the project outline. So the project is separated into 7 phases. Of course, 7 is the number. And each phase is going to inform the next one as we go. So it's going to be a staged approach. There's going to be loads of projects within this project, by the way. when we say the FreeFlow project, that's probably like a category term for a hell of a lot of projects. So we're going to have to just do one after the other, basically. It's a roadmap. You could call it a roadmap of getting to the destination. So we'll be using our Network Healers Symbiosis program to test and trial the process of energy healing. And in fact, I should remove that word energy healing in the next version, to be honest, I think. Maybe use biofield therapies. Once consistent results have been shown, our goal is to then detect the anatomy involved and understand the processes involved at all levels of interaction, whether it's macro, cellular, molecular, or quantum magnetic. So basically, we want to start by giving evidence that there is a change. When you apply energy healing, it does something. That's the first thing to prove. And then once you've given evidence for that, then you can move on and find out how it's doing it and why it's doing it, the processes involved. Once we have detected and found evidence for these processes, we will continue conducting full clinical trials to obtain the evidence-based results needed to bring the profession of healing into mainstream allopathic medicine with statutory regulation. So that's our end game, that's our end goal, isn't it? What we want to do is we want to show that it does something, find evidence for it, show how it does it, and then bring healing into the mainstream by bringing it into mainstream medicine, into mainstream healthcare. And to do that, there's lots of legal barriers in the way. We have to jump through lots of legal hoops and be regulated by different government regulatory boards, and to get us into the same category of medicine as normal conventional medicine that you get in the NHS. Because at the moment, energy healing is in complementary medicine, and that is voluntary regulation. So it's not even regulated statutory, it's not even regulated by law, by the government. It's all voluntary regulation. So anything goes, you can really do anything really, and it's not against the law. That's why the whole sector is so varied, and there's so much, dare I say it, junk going on in the sector. There's some good stuff and some junk stuff. That's the problem. It's completely unregulated. And unfortunately, that's why it's not trusted enough by the mainstream, and quite often ridiculed by the mainstream, you could say. Because of this unregulation, and anyone can do anything, and there's loads of people out there who are actually doing harm as well and preying on people. So the problem is you get such a mix of different things going on that it's just not trusted enough by the mainstream to be taken seriously. So that's why we really need to make this journey into the mainstream. And the way we do it is one step at a time, and it's through research. That's where we start. So let's move on to a couple of the phases. Let me take you through some of these phases. And again, I'm obviously not going to go through this in detail. But just to show you, and you can go and have a look at this document, don't worry. There's 7 phases in this project, and see each one of these numbers, 1.1, 1.2, that's a project within the main project. So all of these are different projects that need to be conducted all the way through this journey. So let's just outline these phases. So phase one is how we generate interest from the medical community and medical organizations. And this is when we present some case studies. Now, this is well underway already. We've been doing this for years now. So our case studies are not necessarily all finished, but by the time, hopefully, we start the project, we'll have case studies ready to be presented, basically. And in fact, that's what the last two, or some of the last lessons of this course is about presenting some case studies. Those will be the same case studies that we're going to present as part of this project. Phase 2 is a literature review. Now, this is where we have to do a deep research into all of the research or studies that have been conducted in energy healing as to this date. And there is a lot. There's a lot of research on energy healing and integrative medicine, biofield therapies, all these types of alternative and complementary medicines. There's been a lot of research done, and we've started this already now, actually, and I'll talk about where we're at in a minute. But there is loads of studies done already, so we need to gather them all together so that we can understand what's been done so far. Because this is where we go. This is where we need to know where the line is, what's been done so far, because then we need to take the next steps. We don't want to be doing stuff that's already been done by people already, basically. So that's what the literature review is all about. So phase 3. Yeah. Hello. Yes, absolutely. So if you're interested in reading and having a look at these this research, then we're using a program called Zotero. I don't know if you've heard of Zotero, but it is a platform where you can collaborate on research, and we've started it already, and we've got a list of papers in there already that we're working on. But I can share a link to the folder structure in Zotero to any of you guys who want to go in and have a look at it and see how we're getting along. So that's absolutely no problem. Okay. So phase 3 is where we take some new recipients and we take them on a healing journey. Nothing changes in terms of network healers, but we document the results in a very research and medical manner. And this will involve medical organizations as well. So you could call this pilot studies. So we do plan to do full clinical trials on all this, so that will come in a minute. But phase 3 is pilot studies, really. It's going to take a few people, not that many. It may be 10 people, maybe 20 people, and we'll do these pilot studies on these particular people. And that's what we're going to hopefully start in July. And really, this is to provide the measurable results. This is where we're actually doing tests on people to measure the results of energy healing. For example, if we take the condition of asthma, we can take blood tests of the recipients throughout the healing. Let's say we take the healing process to be 7 months or something like that. We can actually take blood tests throughout the course of that time, and we can measure certain biomarkers. We can measure things like white blood cell counts and things like that, because some biomarkers can tell us how much inflammation there is in the lungs and how much mucus is being produced in the lungs, for example. Basically, that's just an example, but basically it's about biomarkers. It's about measuring biomarkers to see the actual change in the biology of that person as we're sending them energy healing. That's the measurable results that we're looking for, basically. So that's what we're going to be doing in phase 3, the pilot studies. And I'll give you an update in a minute on exactly where we're at, and I'll give you a few details of what we're planning. Because this is just a kind of a general overview. This is what we want to achieve. So phase 4, on completion of the mini trials or the pilot studies, we'll launch into an in-depth study in detecting the relevant parts of human anatomy and physiology that are responsible for the results that we've had in phase 1 to 3. So this is now moving into speculation for the moment, because in terms of the science, this is now moving into speculation because we're assuming we're going to get results. So, and I'm pretty sure we are going to get results, but this next phase really banks on the idea of making some pretty groundbreaking discoveries. Now, measuring results in the recipient is one thing. Detecting healing energy itself and how it works, that is a whole massive new step in science, which we are going to have to break that boundary. And we've got a plan we've got a beginnings of a plan, and we have to look at very, very weak magnetic fields, but we may have to invent new technology for this. So this is a massive step in step 4. So we haven't yet really started planning this properly because we need to get the pilot studies out of the way first. And that's going to be enough projects to be getting on with quite some time. Okay, phase 5 is detections. So after detecting the magnetic energy anatomy, see, we have to actually detect the magnetic energy anatomy or make a start in that, which people have been trying to do for hundreds of years. So, this is going to be an important step that we have to make. After detecting the magnetic energy anatomy, we must now understand the processes involved in producing magnetic healing energy and how it can be transferred between people. So we detect the healing energy and the organs that produce it, and then we understand the processes involved. And then phase 6. Phase 6 is the clinical trials. So this is where we conduct large-scale clinical trials. So we've already been doing pilot studies, and by the way, phase 3 pilot studies doesn't just stop there. We're going to carry on and on and on. So that the phase 3 pilot studies will not actually stop, and eventually they'll turn into large-scale clinical trials. Because when you're trying to prove, when you're trying to bring evidence into the mainstream, when you're trying to prove a new theory, it's not just you do a research project and boom, it's done. It takes a long, long time. It takes many, many projects. It takes a lot of evidence for that evidence base to really have an impact in the mainstream. So there needs to be a lot of projects in this. So at some point, we're going to conduct clinical trials. We'll have enough evidence that energy healing is actually having an impact, and the clinical trials will be based around moving energy healing into the mainstream. This is when we're actually going to bring it into allopathic medicine. And that it will need the actual full-scale clinical trials to do that. And then phase 7 is actually about bringing... So phase 6 is the clinical trials, and phase 7 is about actually applying it into the NHS. So becoming a department of the NHS. We want network healers to become a department in the NHS and funded by the government. That's our ultimate aim, basically. And this journey, this research project, FreeFlow project, is the journey towards that goal, basically. And then the whole of the mainstream is benefiting from the concepts, these concepts and these practices that have been around for thousands of years, but in modern society has been shunned to the side, and because there's not enough evidence for it. So hopefully, if we can get into the mainstream healthcare like the NHS, then so many more people, well, everyone can then benefit from energy healing. So as you can see there, the phases here are all laid out in this plan, and there's lots of different projects within these phases. Like, for example, phase 4 detections. There's 7 projects within that. So I'll probably leave it there for that document. There are some additional projects in there, by the way. If you go and read through that, there's some additional projects which are projects we want to do that are just fascinating and need to be done at some point, but they're not part of the main journey. So you can go and have a look at that if you like. All right, then I'll stop showing that now, and I can then give you an update on exactly where we're at with it. But any questions on what I've said there? No, we haven't. We've got some leads that we haven't acted on so far, but at the moment we're still in discussions with the supervisors, and I'll talk about that in a second. The PhD project that we're going to start, but no, we're not at that stage yet. So let me explain where that fits in the process. Anyone else got any questions though before I carry on? Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we've got to play the long game. And this project that we're talking about here, the FreeFlow project, is maybe it's a 15 to 20 year project with all the different projects within it. It's going to take a long time, and then how long after that before it gets fully accepted? It is half a century's work. Well, I mean, don't forget that you've been around for millions of years, and you're going through self-realization now. We'll get to that in a minute when we talk about our soul family's journey. But don't forget that your work now is you've got thousands, millions of years ahead of you in filling out your true purpose, your source purpose. So this next bit that we were going to talk about was Veronica's idea, and it came about. It came about from a conversation, really, Veronica, that we were talking about how long. Well, I think the first question was, how long has our higher minds been awake for, or an awake higher mind? Yeah, and so it surprised you to realise that our higher minds first became awake 500,000 years ago. So then that sparked the idea, why don't we just talk about that just a little bit, and the journey from when our souls first evolved, in fact, and then take it up to present moment. And if we have time, beyond maybe, but of course that's kind of speculation, of course. Now let's go right back to the beginnings, shall we? Now, first of all, this soul family that we find ourselves in, it's not just limited here, of course. A soul family is like what you see of a soul family is like the tip of an iceberg. There is a whole lot of people in our soul family that we are not aware of right now, but because what is put into our awareness is not necessarily everything, as we know. There's a certain blindness, isn't there? So there's thousands of people in our soul family, let's put it that way. And some of them we know in this lifetime, and some of them we don't yet know in this life. But this soul family is a very old soul family, I have to say. You could say that it's one of the oldest soul families on the planet. So when did our soul family first evolve? Well, our soul family first evolved when souls first evolved on this planet. Now, I think we've talked about this a little bit before in the reincarnation lesson. So when did souls first evolve on this planet? Well, don't forget that a soul is a vehicle for consciousness, because as we're talking through this, don't forget that your true self, is not the soul. The way I'm using the word soul here, that's the higher mind and the energy body. That's a vehicle. The soul is a vehicle. You are consciousness. You are awareness, pure awareness, which has no beginning and has no end. I want to make sure we say that at the start here, so that I'm not saying here that we came into existence all this time ago, because our true self has never come into existence. It's always there. It's eternal. But having said that, the soul is a channel for individual awareness. Now there is awareness everywhere in the universe, and we'll talk more about that in the lesson Awareness, the seventh principle. But the particular type of awareness that we experience in the filter, this awareness that's looking out of your eyes right now, that, you could say, is an individual awareness until you become self-realized, where it expands into a universal awareness. But it's a particular type of awareness that evolves through the journey of life. And a soul turns up at some point. It evolves, it turns up on the planet, and that is how the awareness can be channeled through into an individual awareness. So when did our souls, our higher minds, first evolve on the planet? Now, this is going to be when very small animals started to evolve. And I think specifically that reincarnation and the higher mind started to evolve from the transition between reptiles and mammals. Now, I did say I was going to look that up, Veronica, and I haven't, but I don't know when that is exactly, but I can give you a ballpark. It's going to be something like 300 million years ago, isn't it? And if anyone wants to Google that, then it's somewhere along those lines. A long time ago, life life first started on the planet about 3.5 billion years ago, but that was just bacteria. And it's just been bacteria for a long, long, long time until around, say, 800 million years ago. And then, different forms of life started to get more and more complex. But, in fact, I can't bear it. I'm going to just find out exactly when mammals first evolved. 225 million years ago is when mammals first appeared. Right, good. So, that doesn't matter, but it gives you a bit of a time frame. This is when I think reincarnation first evolved, and that means the higher mind. So what happened was that there are lots of animals before that, of course, but there was just a lower mind at that point. So when nervous systems evolved in animals, a lower mind evolved as well. So the lower mind is an overlay to the nervous system and to the material body. Now, at some point in evolution, the lower mind must have detached from the material body at death. And that probably happened for millions of years. And then eventually, in one particular generation, somehow it evolved the capability of coming back into another individual. So that lower mind would have left the material body at death, hung about for a while, and come back into another individual that was growing, that was an embryo. So that would have been the first higher mind, you could say. But then that over millions of years, that process would have evolved into the idea that, or the concept of higher minds and reincarnation. So our soul family actually started at that point as well. So that's when the soul first existed. Now, there would have been reincarnation through the animal species for a long period of time. Completely automatic, completely unconscious. The higher mind, would not have had any control over it. It's a completely natural and unconscious process happening at this point. Now, at some point, I'm not going to go through the evolution of species, of course, here, but I'm going to jump to the point where humans evolved. And first of all, we're talking about all the different human species that lived, a couple of million years ago or 1 million years ago. Homo erectus, Homo habilis, there's loads of different species of humans that evolved, and then Neanderthals. And our soul family first became awake, the higher minds first became aware of their own reincarnation, and we kind of say awake higher mind, around 500,000 years ago. And that was in the Neanderthal species. And I think there's a lot, in terms of mainstream science, I think there's a lot that's not yet known about all this time. Well, it's obvious there's a lot not yet known. They're finding new things all the time, but it changes all the time. The full knowledge is not yet known, really, in science about the Neanderthal species and the subsequent human species. But I almost remember the first, it's not really a memory, but it's an intuitive memory that was the first time our higher minds became aware of their own reincarnation. So from that moment on, they started building their Kundalini system. So everybody in our soul group started building the Kundalini system around 500,000 years ago. And then the Neanderthal species carried on for a while, and the modern human Homo sapiens started to evolve, and there was a bit of blending between the two and interbreeding and things like that. So it's not exactly a clear-cut difference in species, but at some point we turned into Homo sapiens, started reincarnating into a new species, or we turned into a new species. How that happened is another story, but it's not the story we're telling at the moment. But it happened, basically. And throughout this whole period of time, that Kundalini was growing. The higher mind was building its Kundalini. So the higher mind was aware of its reincarnation, it's aware of its karma, it was aware of its growing Kundalini. Now, we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? And this is what sparked this conversation, in fact. It was Veronica's idea that we talk about this. But one of the fascinating things that's going on in that huge period of time is the growth of the Kundalini. How slow the growth of the Kundalini was in that particular time. Now, I think that I remember about 2,000 years ago where we were at in terms of the Kundalini. In 2,000 years ago, we were at the level of the throat, around there. The Kundalini growth had got to about the level of the throat about 2,000 years ago in this soul group, in this soul family. Now, 2,000 years ago back to 500,000 years. Yeah, how long is that for that Kundalini growth? I mean, what does that make? One growth from the root chakra to the sacral chakra. But how many lifetimes is that? How slow is that growth? I mean, I'm calling it slow just compared to sort of modern times, but because it's all relative, isn't it? But it seems like such a tiny, short or very slow growth. So maybe every lifetime was only sort of 20 years at that point during those times. But the amount of growth that happened during that time was very slow, and that you can see why, because the level of intelligence and complexity of the species was a lot less back then. So Kundalini growth is about emotional lesson learning, isn't it? So the sophistication of emotions back then was probably not as developed as it is today in modern humans. So the growth of the Kundalini was very, very slow during that time. So we got to about 2,000 years ago, and our Kundalini growth was up to the throat, which is still a well-developed place to be. But it took a long time coming. And then over the last 2,000 years, and by the way, I should say that some of our soul family had already started to become self-realized at that point. So the first person to become self-realized on the planet was about 5,000 years ago. And that person, who there is no name, that is a nameless person, but the effects of that person has created various ancient texts called the Upanishads. The Upanishads are ancient Vedic texts, and they predate, or they are the foundation, or the foundations of Hinduism and parts of Buddhism and stuff. And then Krishna became self-realized. I'm going to run through these very quickly, but people started becoming self-realized very sporadically at that point. Lots and lots of time in between, only on their own, and lots of time between these self-realizations. The Buddha, Jesus, Patanjali. These are all names that people have become self-realized and sparked off various different spiritual traditions. And then about a couple hundred years ago, suddenly there was a bit more of an expansion in self-realization. This is all part of the same soul family. There was an expansion of self-realization, and more people started to become self-realized around a couple hundred years ago, 150 years ago, 100 years ago, 20th century. And here, this was mainly happening in India. Self-realized yogis, people like Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar, Sri Lahiri. I mean, some of you might know these names, might not, it doesn't really matter. Iyengar in the 20th century, Ramana Maharishi in the 20th century, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in the 20th century, Krishnamurti, who keeps coming to see us. So a lot of people suddenly started to become self-realized. And then suddenly, I would say, it's exploded. So Kundalini awakenings are starting to happen on a mass scale now. Hundreds. I think probably from now on, hundreds every day might keep happening. And this is where we're at right now. So this soul family that's here today, let's say, the lifetime that we are in, we organized to become self-realized together. We organized to become self-realized for a particular reason and a particular purpose, and decided to meet up and do it together, basically. So the Kundalini system that had been growing through all of that time suddenly got to the point where it was ready for a Kundalini awakening. So that point is the crown chakra. When the Kundalini has grown to the crown chakra, then it's ready for a Kundalini awakening. So everybody here has had a Kundalini awakening whenever it was. Everyone's at slightly different times. But that Kundalini awakens from the Kundalini bulb underneath the root chakra. And it starts to move up the spine through the emotion chakras. And, that can take quite a few years sometimes, can't it? Because there are blockages in the chakras usually. And that's down to the amount of karma that is left over. Because throughout that journey of spiritual evolution and emotional lesson learning, the high mind has very gradually been learning all these lessons, these emotional lessons, and these emotional lessons are designed to produce less and less negative karma, because karma is emotional memory, of course. So by the time the Kundalini growth gets to the crown chakra, then there is no more lesson learning to be done, and the karma levels are down to a tiny, tiny level and equal amounts, because there's balance. You have to balance the two. And then that person's ready for a Kundalini awakening. Anyway, so the K1 is going up your spine at some point, and you guys may have had to unblock the chakras on the way up the spine, or maybe some of you didn't notice that it was happening. But then the K1 gets to the Bindu, and then the K2 is activated and comes down from the ninth chakra to the crown chakra. And then section 3, the K3 moves from the crown chakra to the Bindu. And this is the Kundalini phase that everybody has been through now. And then the K3 and the K1 mix in the Bindu. And by the way, this mixing in the Bindu is a symbol in ancient traditional Kundalini yoga. It's a symbol of the mixing of Shakti and Shiva. Shiva is the feminine energy that moves up the spine, and Shakti is the masculine energy which comes down from the top. Now, this masculine and feminine that's just a metaphor for duality, the balancing of duality. And these two energies, K1 and K3, and we like to talk about it in technical terms, biological terms, instead of traditional terms, that's all. But anyway, that goes into the lower mind and starts a transformation. So that's the transformation that you're going through now. And there's different phases of self-realization. And there's different cycles to self-realization. There's a negative cycle, which is 7 years. Then there's a positive cycle, which is 7 years. And then there's a unification cycle, which is another 7 years. And there's lots of phases within those cycles, basically. And this is the transformation process. And this is part of the global awakening. So the reason why it's started off very sporadically in our soul family. And then at some point, just recently, really, it started to funnel out, and more people are becoming self-realized. And that's going to carry on exponentially. More and more people are going to have Kundalini awakenings and becoming self-realized this century. It's just going to explode. And that's what the global awakening is. And that's what has to happen. That happens on every single planet that has life on, intelligent life on. This is the cycles of the planets. So other planets that have got intelligent life on go through these same cycles. They all go through a global awakening. This is what happens in the universe. This is how the universe becomes self-realized on all of these different planets that go through a global awakening. Okay, I'll stop for a minute. Anyone got any questions so far? When you say, so you're talking about Kundalini growth, yeah? Yeah, so the Kundalini growth is not affected by chakra blockages. So when you have a Kundalini awakening, the K1 that's moving up the spine, that gets affected by chakra blockages. But that's different to Kundalini growth. Kundalini growth that happens over many, many, many incarnations, that's not affected, that doesn't go through the same channel. That the K1 is not moving up the spine at that point. The Kundalini system is actually being built. It's actually being grown up the spine, basically. And it's emotional lesson learning that allows that to happen. But the higher mind is constructing it. And it's not. It's on a different level of frequency to the emotional blockages at that point. So it's not doesn't get affected at all. Well, K1 doesn't grow. It shoots. Yeah. Well, think of it like the central spinal channel is like a cylinder or a tube, and the Kundalini bulb, the Kundalini energy K1 is held in the bulb underneath that tube. It's like a big test tube with a big flask, glass flask underneath. Think of it like that. And then when you apply heat to that flask, like a Bunsen burner or something, then it starts to boil and then it starts to shoot up the glass cylinder. That's the K1, which is moving up that glass cylinder, basically. But the chakras, it has to go through the major chakras. And if there are blockages along the way, it has to force its way through those blockages. That's a Kundalini awakening. But Kundalini growth is completely different because you are building the cylinder. So it's not that you're trying to force something through the chakras. You're actually building the whole system in the first place. See what I mean? Yeah. Yes, okay. So basically, Kundalini awakening is a completely different thing from Kundalini growth. That's the first thing. So that's the first thing we've got to understand is that Kundalini awakening only happens when there is a fully grown Kundalini system. So Kundalini awakening happens at the end of the Kundalini journey. And the Kundalini journey is the growth of that Kundalini system. And the growth of that Kundalini system happens over many, many incarnations. And the journey that we've just described of 500,000 years, that's how long it took this soul family to build its Kundalini system. But when that Kundalini system is built and it's fully grown, then it can have a Kundalini awakening. And that's a very different process to the actual growth of the Kundalini system. So when you see somebody's, when you look at somebody's trying to assess where somebody is, the first question you want to ask yourself is, where is their Kundalini growth? Because you start with that. Where is their Kundalini growth? And you might get, say, the sacral. And that's where they are in their spiritual evolution journey. And that's how far the Kundalini system has grown so far. So the emotion lesson learning that they're going through at that time is very much based around reproduction and parental care. Now, somebody else, so before you can even assess whether somebody has had a Kundalini awakening, you have to first assess where their Kundalini growth is. Because if you assess where their Kundalini growth is and the answer you get is fully grown, then the next question is, okay, so are they ready for a Kundalini awakening in this lifetime? That's the next question, right? And you might get a yes, you might get a no, because somebody can be, say, at the almost fully grown at the brow chakra level, and they've still got a few lifetimes left, or something like that. So once you've asked the question and you can see their Kundalini system is fully grown, and the next question, like I said, is, are they ready for a Kundalini awakening in this lifetime? If the answer is yes, then the next question is, have they had one? Have they had a Kundalini awakening already? Yes or no? If they've had one, now you can start to try and see where their K1 energy has got to. Because the K1 energy doesn't start moving until they've had a Kundalini awakening. You see what I mean? And then you've got another journey. This is where the confusion lies. Then you've got another journey up the spine. And this is the one that goes through the central spinal channel and can get stuck with blockages. Do you see what I mean? So there's two different movements up the spine. One is a very long-term growth, and the other one is a Kundalini awakening. Yeah, okay, great. And if there's anything else, by the way, if anyone else is confused about any topics, please do ask, because if I've explained something or not explained it very well, I need to go back and explain it in a different way. So please do ask whenever it's not clear, that's for sure. All right, okay, so who is it, I wonder? Well, I think it's one of the human avatars, isn't it? But which one is is another question. I think it's Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Uh, he's visited us plenty of times before. It's the one that was with that spent a lot of time with the Beatles, if you remember, in the 60s. Excellent. And he was in a past incarnation. He was Jesus's mother, and he's come and visited. He's visited us, or she has visited us quite a few times before, years ago, if you remember. Well, there we go. Isn't it? Excellent. Now, I think this is going to be a trend now. The human avatars are, and I call them the human avatars, just because there are lots of other avatars as well. But the human avatars, I think, are going to come and visit us periodically. They're going to introduce themselves to us one by one. And Krishnamurti's been coming, and now he's come, and so yeah, I think we can expect that to happen now. Now, I guess I should also say something here, just to clarify something about some of these avatars that. I missed one out for some reason, and somebody who became self-realized in, I think it was something like 600 AD, a person called Gaudapada. And Gaudapada was a big part of our meetings quite a few years ago when we were meeting it quite a lot. And Gaudapada used to come and visit us a lot, and he was instrumental in our processes, yeah, he stopped coming to see us 2 or 3 years ago because he actually finished his life cycle, and what that means is that the soul became absorbed into the source. So a soul has a life cycle. Everything has a life cycle, doesn't it? Planets have a life cycle. The soul has a life cycle. You could say that I've just thought that you could say that the planet is a vehicle as well, couldn't you? The planet is a vehicle for life. The soul is a vehicle for, the material body and lower mind is a vehicle for the soul. The soul is a vehicle for awareness, the awareness of the universe. But every vehicle has a life cycle. And so a soul will have a life cycle. So our vehicles will eventually become absorbed into the source. And that will be the end of our life cycle of our soul. Our true self is eternal, of course. So by that time, nothing will be changed. It will be in such a state of universal awareness that actually nothing will change for us. But the soul will eventually absorb into the source. And Gaudapada became finally absorbed into the source a few years ago. Gaudapada is quite a famous avatar, actually. It doesn't always go by the name of Gaudapada. Gaudapada was his last incarnation, and we were all there with him in that last incarnation. We were his disciples. But he's known as other names, and he's quite famous certainly in Hinduism and New Age spirituality as well. And they call him Mahavatar Babaji, and that's the well-known version of his name, and he's appeared to many different people in the past, and there's loads of stuff on him on the internet. Mahavatar Babaji, and Mahavatar means great avatar. And so anyone who became self-realized before Gaudapada has also become absorbed already. So, for example, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Patanjali, they've all become absorbed into the source. Okay, so the Kundalini growth, the answer you got was at the root, and then you also got that she's ready for Kundalini awakening. Okay, right. So this is just something that we have to decipher in our intuition, and don't forget the twists in intuition that can happen. So you're not always going to get. You got to assume that you're not always going to get the correct answer, because your high mind might be playing games with you for some reason. So that can happen. Part of it is to learn to just trust and say it anyway, and it doesn't matter. You've got to trust your high mind that the answer is the right answer that you need to give. That's one thing to bear in mind. But also, if you're getting clear contradictory answers, that can happen. You just have to go back and delve a little bit more, ask some more questions, ask some more, why is it telling you that exactly? So ask why why you're being given the root chakra as a Kundalini growth, and then ask why you've been given that she's ready for a Kundalini awakening. It's inviting you to ask more questions. It's inviting you to practice. It's inviting you to develop the process, basically. So carry on asking questions, and you might get to the bottom of it. And what you might find is this can happen sometimes in intuition. Sometimes you're being given an answer which relates to somebody else. That can happen. And so it's something to be aware of. You might ask a question, or where is this person's Kundalini growth? And you might get an answer. That your high mind might give you the answer of their partner, or something like that. Or that if you're asking about the Kundalini awakening, there's a twist. There might be a twist in there. You might be getting somebody else's answer, and you've just got to find the question that that matches that answer. This is why intuition is not just a clear-cut thing. Sometimes you've got to delve into it, decipher it, and find out where the different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. And sometimes you won't even find the answer. Sometimes you'll be giving lots of jigsaw puzzles and you won't be able to put them together, and that's just something that happens as well. Sometimes afterwards you look back and you realize. So that can happen as well. Yeah, and also on top of that, this is a way that your higher mind will teach you how to use the connection, because there are the more questions you ask, the more you start to learn what type of answers you're going to get answered, and what type of answers you're going to get nonsense answers. And certain questions, especially about the future, what's going to happen to me, it is very, very rare that the higher mind's going to play ball. Okay, well, that's good. Yeah. And quite often when you give intuition to other people, it's what they need to hear. So quite often we need to stop being attached to, am I giving the factually correct answer to somebody, and just let it flow, because whatever your higher mind is saying to that person is for their highest benefit. That's where the trust comes in, is to trust that your higher mind knows best. So we shouldn't question what comes out of our mouth. All right, well, shall we call it a day then? Okay, well, have a lovely Christmas, and I'm sure I'll see some of you before. If I don't, have a lovely Christmas, and see you guys after the holidays. We're back on the 5th, I think. I think that was the date, wasn't it? Monday the 5th. And keep up with the chat. If you got any other questions or discussions or anything to put on the chat, we can still keep chatting on. All right then. See you guys later. Bye-bye.